Hello everyone, and welcome to my Soap Twist 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The large Forrester estate was bathed in mellow afternoon light, which filtered through the tall windows of the living room, casting long shadows on the exquisite furniture and family photographs that lined the walls. Eric Forrester, the patriarch of the Forrester Creations Corporation, sat in his favorite armchair, a sketchpad on his lap, leisurely sketching ideas for a new collection. Despite recurring disagreements with his son Ridge about the company's future, Eric found comfort in these peaceful moments, remembering himself why he had built this legacy from the bottom up. Dylan raced through the living room door, her face pallid and smeared with tears. She was a young woman in her mid-20s, with tousled brown hair and large, terrified eyes. She had been a minor presence in the Forrester household, initially as an art instructor who was connected to the family's younger generation, and more lately as the bearer of an excruciating secret that was eating her alive. Mr. Forrester. Eric. Dad. She faltered, her voice shaking as she spoke the word no one in the room expected. Eric looked up, his pencil paused in mid-stroke, and confusion etched his distinguished features. You need to see this. I can't keep it inside anymore. Eric laid the sketchpad aside and carefully rose from his chair. He was not her biological father. Dylan had always been recognized as an acquaintance through Electra and the art classes, a friend of the younger generation. But the way she uttered Dad sent a shiver down his spine, as if she was yearning for a deeper connection than anyone realized. Dylan, my dear, what's wrong?
Sit down.
You look like you've seen a ghost. Eric pointed to the sofa, his voice soothing and paternal, as it often was with the young people who surrounded the Forrester family. She did not sit. Instead, she paced, wringing her hands and breathing heavily. It's about Luna. Luna Nozoa. And me. I have to tell you my biggest secret. I've been carrying it for weeks, and it's destroying me. Eric's forehead was furrowing. Luna's death had shattered the family, Finn's biological daughter, the wayward young woman who had caused so much havoc before her terrible death in a hit-and-run tragedy. The police had conducted an investigation, but the driver had not been recognized publicly, despite whispers that it was an accident. Dylan slowed down. What does this have to do with Luna? She stopped pacing and looked at him, tears flowing down her cheeks. I was the one driving the car that night. I hit her. I killed her. The words echoed in the air like a thunderclap. Eric's face drained of color, and his powerful frame appeared to shrink as he processed the confession. He'd heard tales, seen the sadness in Finn and Steffi's eyes, but this, a young lady he hardly knew standing in his living room, admitting to destroying a life? You what? He said softly, dropping back into his chair. It was an accident, Dylan exclaimed, her words flowing out in a panicked flood. I swear, Eric. I was driving home late that night, distracted, thinking about my job, my life falling apart, after everything with the art classes and the kids. Luna ran out into the road suddenly. It was dark, raining a little. I swerved, but the impact... I panicked. I stopped, checked, but she was already gone. I called the police anonymously at first, but then I turned myself in properly. They ruled it accidental. No charges, Finn's daughter. The girl who had been imprisoned for her misdeeds escaped and met a dreadful end. And now this young woman is calling him Dad? But why come to me? Why now? And why did you call me Dad? Dylan's cries grew louder, and she sank on the sofa, hiding her face in her hands. Because you're my father, Eric. My biological father. Eric felt the room whirl around him. He grasped the arms of his chair, his heart racing. This could not be genuine. He has children, Ridge, Thorne, Kristen, and Felicia, as well as troubled relationships with Rick and Bridget from his previous marriages. What about another child? A secret daughter? How, what are you saying? He asked, his voice scratchy. Dylan raised her eyes, begging. My mother was a woman you had a brief affair with years ago, back in the early 2000s. Her name was Elena Shaw, and she was a model who worked for Forrester briefly, a one-time thing during one of your separations from Stephanie. She never told you because she didn't want to disrupt your life, your family. She raised me alone, and on her deathbed last year, she told me who my real father was. That's why I came to Los Angeles, why I took the teaching job near the Foresters. Elena Shaw, he dimly remembered her as a gorgeous young model with black hair and a calm temperament. Stephanie and I had a brief romance during a difficult period. It was possible. God, it was possible. He stood and crossed to her side, his hand quivering as he rested it on her shoulder. Dylan, if this is true. It's true, she said quietly, removing a folded envelope from her pocket. Mom left me this letter for you, with details, dates, even a DNA test she had done secretly using something from an old event. And I brought my own sample. We can test it properly if you want. But Eric, Dad, I needed you to know everything. The accident, the blood on my hands, and the blood we share. Eric reached for the envelope, his eyes watering. The weight of years, of lost time, fell upon him. A daughter he never knew, now burdened with unbearable guilt. My God, he muttered.
A daughter.
And you've been suffering alone with this. Dylan nodded, tears streaming. I didn't mean to kill her. Luna was Finn's daughter, your granddaughter, in a way, through the complicated family ties. I feel like I've destroyed part of this family before I even joined it. Eric embraced her, his own tears falling. The patriarch, who had survived scandals, betrayals, and losses, was now facing probably the most profound discovery of his life. We'll get through this, he stated confidently, but his voice cracked.
Together.
As family. However, as they clutched each other, the door creaked slightly open. Ridge had arrived home early and overheard the end of the talk from the hallway. His expression hardened with astonishment and distrust. Another secret child? And how does this relate to Luna's death? This might rip the Forrester family apart again. The afternoon light faded as storms raged, both literally and metaphorically, over the palace. Dylan had finally unburdened her soul, but the revelations were just beginning. Eric hugged his newfound daughter, quietly pledging to protect her, as the ripples of truth threatened to drown them all in drama, forgiveness, and the never-ending cycle of love and grief that marked the Forresters' bold and beautiful lives. As the days passed, Eric struggled with the DNA findings, which verified Dylan's paternity. The results of the test were undeniably positive. He sat in his Forrester Creations office, staring at the report, as memories of Elena came flooding back. She had been compassionate and ambitious, but she refused to interfere in his turbulent marriage. Now her daughter, his daughter, was here, traumatized by tragedy. Dylan spent hours telling Eric stories of her childhood, her mother's quiet satisfaction in her accomplishments as a teacher, and the loneliness of growing up without a father figure. Eric listened, his heart aching from the years lost. He gradually introduced her to various members of the family, beginning with Donna, who welcomed her with open arms, and on to Brooke, who offered support despite the obstacles. However, the mystery behind the catastrophe loomed big. Dylan confronted Finn and Steffi in a heartbreaking confrontation at the Cliff House, where she apologized passionately for inadvertently killing Luna. Finn, ever the kind doctor, forgave her, seeing the agony of unintentional consequences. Steffi, who was protective of her husband, suffered more, but gradually softened after witnessing Dylan's real contrition. However, when the family discovered Dylan's true father, sentiments differed. Ridge was initially suspicious, accusing it of being a ruse for money or power, but the DNA hushed him. Thorne greeted her cordially, recognizing parallels from his own tangled family history. Hope and Liam, involved in their own troubles, provided muted support. Electra, Dylan's longtime friend, felt betrayed at first for not knowing the whole truth sooner, but she stood by her side, guiding her through the Forrester world. While Spencer, Electra's boyfriend, struggled with the irony, Dylan had killed the lady who had tormented him, although unintentionally. Eric, on the other hand, developed a strong protective instinct. He recruited the best lawyers to ensure that no unresolved legal issues from the tragedy arose. He welcomed Dylan into the organization gently, offering her a position on the creative team and utilizing her artistic expertise. The sketches she presented amazed him and reminded him of his own early days. Nights were spent conversing, father and daughter bonding over common characteristics such as a preference for bold designs and a stubborn disposition. Dylan told up about her anxieties, including the possibility of losing her teaching job, nightmares from that terrible night, and shame that no amount of forgiveness could totally erase. "I never wanted to hurt anyone," she admitted one evening at dinner at the house. "Luna had her demons, but she didn't deserve that end." Eric nodded, gripping her hand. "Life in this family is never simple, Dylan. We've all made mistakes and kept secrets, but you're here now. You're my daughter, and that means something." As the weeks progressed into months, Dylan found a place amid the pandemonium. She built tentative relationships with her siblings and helped create a new brand that combined historical Forester beauty with modern artistic flair. The accident's aftermath remained, but with Eric's help, she began to recover. However, in typical Forester manner, peace was temporary. Rumors circulated that former foes were questioning the accident's accidental character. Bill Spencer searched about for a story. Ridge, still hesitant to share his father's attention, argued over company decisions. Throughout it all, Eric stood by Dylan. "You called me Dad when you needed me the most," he told her one time. Dylan smiled through tears, finally feeling the weight lifted. Her deepest secret had led her home. Not just to a father, but to a family that was brave enough to accept the wonderful chaos of truth. That night, the mansion's lights gleamed warmly, a beacon among the splendor and dirt of Los Angeles. Dylan Forester, newly claimed, stepped into her inheritance, prepared for whatever dramas awaited. Love, loss, and redemption. The cycle went on indefinitely, just like the Forester designs. Dylan's words sprang forth before she could second-guess herself, hanging in the air between them like a clap of thunder. Eric looked up from the papers on his desk, his reading glasses sliding down his nose, and simply stared at her. The study was quiet save for the steady ticking of the antique clock on the wall, which Dylan had heard her entire life. It had always felt reassuring. Tonight felt like a countdown. Eric laid the papers aside slowly and deliberately, as if any rapid movement might disrupt the delicate equilibrium that was keeping the moment together. He observed his daughter's face, noting the strain around her eyes and how her hands twisted in front of her. She appeared pallid, with a shiver running through her that she couldn't quite conceal. "Sit down," he urged gently, nodding toward the chair opposite from him. "Whatever it is, we can talk about it." Dylan's feet remained rooted to the rug. She had mentally prepared this talk 1,000 times, imagining every conceivable response. Anger, disappointment,
Shock.
silence. But now that the moment had arrived, all those imagined scenes had dispersed like leaves in the wind. She nodded and sat, perched on the edge of the chair, as if she may run at any moment. Eric folded his hands on the desk. "You're scaring me," he said, his tone calm but concerned. "What is going on?" She swallowed hard. Her throat felt dry, as if the words she needed were trapped there, too deep to be easily extracted. She remained silent for a long time, staring at the familiar lines in the desk's wood grain. This desk had been the site of numerous family discussions and decisions that affected careers and lives. It now felt like a witness. "I've been lying to you," Dylan eventually said. Eric's brows came together.
About what?
"About myself," she said, just above a whisper. She pushed herself to glance up and meet his eyes. They were kind eyes, steady and warm, the same ones that had stared at her with pride when she graduated, worry when she struggled, and affection at all times. That made this more difficult. Eric leaned back slightly to give her space. "Everyone keeps things from their parents sometimes," he told me. "That doesn't mean it's unforgivable." "This isn't the minor offense," Dylan responded immediately. "It doesn't matter where I've been or who I've seen. It's bigger than that." The ticking clock became louder. Eric waited, his patience a tacit encouragement. "I don't know where to start," she said. "Start anywhere," he advised. "We'll find our way." She drew a hesitant breath. "You've always believed you knew me," she said. "And in many ways, you do. You have been there for me my entire life. You taught me to be strong, to advocate for myself, and to be honest. That's why this hurts so much. I haven't been honest with you. Eric's countenance softened. Dylan, whatever you're about to say, you're still my daughter. The words nearly crushed her. Tears welled behind her eyes, but she blinked them away. Do you recall when I left town a few years back? When I said I needed space, I meant I wanted to figure out who I was without all the demands. Yes, Eric replied. You said you needed time. I didn't like it, but I understood. I didn't tell you everything, she admitted. I wasn't running away from expectations. I was avoiding the truth. Eric felt a constriction in his chest. Back then, he suspected she was holding something back. A father's intuition, perhaps. What truth? He asked quietly. Dylan's fingers squeezed.
That I was terrified, she admitted.
I'm terrified of disappointing you. Eric grimaced. I'm terrified of losing you. Lose me? Dylan, nothing you could do would stop me from loving you. She laughed bitterly, and without humor. I wish I'd believed that. A thick and heavy silence spread between them once more. Dylan could feel her heart beating inside her ears. She had come here resolved to say it all and stop hiding. But now that she was at the edge, the secret felt massive, like a wall she had been leaning against for years. There's something about me you don't know, she informed me. Something I've known for a long time. Eric nodded once. Okay. I've tried to be the person everyone expected, she said. The girl who fit in the picture. The person who made things easier. But the reality is, I've been living a life that wasn't entirely my own. Her voice shook, and she paused to compose herself. Eric didn't say anything, but his gaze never left her face. I fell in love, Dylan explained. Eric relaxed slightly. You've been in love before. Yes, she agreed. But not like this. Not in a way that made me understand I couldn't continue pretending. The word reverberated in Eric's mind. Pretending to what? She closed her eyes. That I was someone I wasn't. When she reopened them, there was a resolution that hadn't existed before. Dad, she continued with a firmer voice, I'm not who you believe I am. Not entirely. Eric felt a tinge of worry. He had established empires, battled scandals, and endured treachery. Still, there was something about how she stated it that bothered him. Help me understand, he said. Dylan took another big breath. I'm not straight, she admitted simply. I never have been. The words landed in the room and appeared to sit there, waiting. Eric blinked. He stopped speaking for a moment. Not because he was upset, but because he was processing and modifying his image of his daughter to accommodate this new reality. Dylan mistook his silence for judgment. I understand this may be difficult to hear, she hastened on. I know you had thoughts about my future, about the type of life I'd lead. I tried incredibly hard to make those concepts a reality. But I was lying.
To you and to myself.
And I couldn't do it anymore, Eric said, leaning forward with his elbows on the desk. Is this why you left? He asked softly. She nodded. I needed to determine whether I could live honestly. If I could accept myself first, I wouldn't need to ask anyone else. Can you? He asked. Yes, she replied without hesitation. I can. I do. Another stillness followed, unlike the first. Less tense and more meditative. Eric exhaled slowly. Thank you for telling me, he finally said. Dylan stared at him. Is that it? He gave a faint, sorrowful smile. Did you expect me to shout? I wasn't sure what to expect, she said. I've heard how people speak. I was scared you would see me differently. I see you differently, Eric replied. Her heart fell. Then he continued. I see you more clearly. She examined his face for signals of rejection but found none. Only reflection and a sense of remorse. I wish you'd trusted me sooner, he added. I wish I'd made it clear that you never had to hide who you are from me. Tears eventually welled up. I was so scared, she said quietly. Eric stood and walked around the desk. He paused for only a second before grabbing her in his arms. Dylan stiffened in surprise, then melted against him, the strain she'd been holding for years suddenly released. She buried her face in his shoulder and wailed, deep, shaking sobs that seemed to originate from deep within her chest. "I'm sorry," Eric said, clutching her tightly. "I apologize if I ever made you feel like my love was conditional."
She shook her head.
"You didn't mean to," she said. "But I convinced myself you wouldn't understand." "Understanding comes from listening," he told me. "And I'm listening now." They remained like this for a long time, until Dylan's breathing slowed and the tears stopped. She backed away, wiping her tears, embarrassed. "I didn't just want to tell you that," she admitted. "There's more." Eric lifted an eyebrow, but his countenance did not show irritation. "All right," he said. "What else?" "I'm in a relationship," Dylan explained. "With someone who makes me feel like I can finally breathe."